Good morning, Trinity, and welcome to Shift. We thought it would be helpful to have our team here who is working on the call committee process and the Where Are We Now process. And, excuse me, we are here now. We are here right now. That's where we are. To answer the most frequently asked questions, and those are the questions we're sort of hearing from you. So the first one is, what is the process to find a new senior pastor? Now let me Trinity speak that for you. Why don't we have a new senior pastor yet? Troy?
Great question, Jeri. Thank you. I am part of the call committee along with Karen and John Sweeney and Susan Vickerman, Gavin Tempero, Adam Holmes, Cassie Enzenauer. And we have been meeting since shortly after we were formed back in October?
Yep.
October. And every 2-3 weeks or so, we get together and kind of figure out what's next in our process. And we put together a graphic that was really helpful for us to understand. And the first two items on that graphic are get an interim senior pastor, check, and form the call committee, check. Now, the next big phase is the hearing from Trinity, hearing from the congregation and the members. And that's the process that we are embarking on now. We've been preparing for it for quite some time, and we are now really rolling it out. And that process covers listening and discovering and discerning. And I know that Karen and Pastor John will elaborate quite a bit on those pieces, but we do want to hear from the folks. The listen piece is hearing from members, both in individual interviews and in larger group settings, so that we can discover where we are and where we have been, so that we can discern where we are going. What is our mission? What is our vision for the future? And what is God's preferred and promised future for Trinity Lutheran Church? So that is the big step that we are in right now, and the call committee is firmly embedded in this process. We have people in multiple phases of this We Are Here Now process, including Karen, who is a key member of the listening leaders. After this process takes place, and it's a big one, it's a big part of it, then we as a call committee will continue to put together information for the synod. It's called a ministry site profile, which includes information about demographics, both within the membership of Trinity, but also outside in the community. And it talks about budget, it talks about ministry, it has a job description, and it has a lot of the results of the We Are Here Now process, where we're going. That will get submitted to Synod. Synod will probably have a little bit of feedback. Once that's posted, then we can invite candidates and start looking at candidates. That will lead us to doing interviews and assessments of those candidates. That will lead us to having, hopefully, a solid recommendation that we can bring to the congregation, and a vote, and eventually a senior pastor. So we're moving. We are continuing to work all the while these other processes are going on. So we're plugging away, and we would love to hear from anybody at any time. If you've got questions, feel free to contact me directly or any of the other members of the call committee. We are available and willing to hear from you.
Thank you, Troy. That was great. So what we are in right now is listening process. And Karen Randolph is the leader of the listening team. Right. Karen, what is that process?
Yeah, so thank you, Jeri. Thanks for the opportunity. So I am serving in a unique role, and I'm really humbled by the role. And we have 7 listeners that are working right now, and so I'll name those folks out so that you get a sense of who's participating in this program. It's Chuck Ritchie, it's Ron Van Buren, it's Cassie Eisenhower, it's Susan Vickerman, and Susie Eastman, Terry Allen, and myself. And we have been called together to listen to a subset of our Trinity community as kind of the first step of really getting into the hearts and minds of what people are feeling about their experience here at Trinity and kind of what their hopes and dreams are of where they'd like Trinity to go into the future. And so as we all know, our faith journeys are really pretty individual, but when we come together as a community, it gets amplified and our momentum builds. And so this is the first part of this discovery process. And so we're just really humbled to be a part of it, and it will take us probably about 3 to 4 weeks to complete these interviews. And these interviews will get written up in a report, and that report will get handed over to the steering committee that is really kind of the cornerstone of this process. And I'll let Pastor John do a little bit of an overview of the steering committee, because that will kind of lead us to the other steps in the We Are Here Now process. Is that okay?
Great suggestion. I think, that's perfect. Tell
Okay,
us about the
that would
steering
be- that would
committee
be a
and their
segue.
role.
I will do so. Thanks, Troy and Karen and Jeri for having me this morning. The steering committee is the committee that overlooks the whole ball of wax, the whole We Are Here Now journey. And in particular, they will be called upon as facilitators once we get to the stage where the results of the listening times, which result in a report that will be created, discovery report, to Troy's point, listening, discovery, discernment. And the discovery report is a part of a larger report called Church Future Finder, a 50-page report that assesses our relationship, Trinity's relationship to our neighbors. And so it's a dynamic, exciting kind of window into who we are as a faith community, which is so important at this time. And what happens then after that report is completed. It's given to leadership and to the whole congregation, and then members have opportunities if they're on a committee, if they're on a team of any kind, a small group, all sorts of small group gatherings, and new ones that we create, to look at that report and talk about it and reflect on it and ask, does this capture who Trinity is? Is this accurate? What's missing here? What would I add to it? And then groups and their conversations will add to it. So who facilitates those groups, even though they already have group leaders, many of them? Troy. And the rest of the steering team will facilitate these conversations that we have with one another. So that's really exciting. And of course, it moves on from there, the We Are Here Now process, to larger group events like the timeline event, another way using physically a timeline and Post-its to tell the story of who Trinity is. And then eventually a discernment event, which is ask, okay, what do we make of all this? What does this tell us about where God is leading us now? And it's more on the question of who are we and where are we going? And that will be a large group event. So then you can see there's all these opportunities for people to get involved. And the steering team is kind of is facilitating and leading and directing and overseeing. And so that's when things will really get interesting once the data is all, and the stories are collected. It's not just data. It's, as Karen pointed out, it's stories. It's people telling what their faith means to them, particularly in the context of Trinity. So we're getting at Trinity's story. Anyway, hope that's a helpful overview.
Well, stories are stories are the way we talk about our lives, the way we talk about Trinity. And so I love that part about it. Karen, what are you learning about listening?
So if my husband were here, he'd probably say I'm a pretty outspoken person. And it takes a lot to learn how to listen. And so one of the greatest lessons I took from the faith practices curriculum that Pastor John had in January was dwelling on the Word, was a training exercise that we all used. And I am really practicing using that technique in this process. And so I just had my first interview session with one of the Trinity members here, and I practiced laying out what's the question, and then we paused for a minute, and then the person shared back the response, and then I had to process the response, and then I shared the interpretation of the response back to validate it. And it was a really great exercise because the typical response for me in the past may have been just to relate to that person and attach my story to their story, right?
Right,
And
this is what, yeah.
Exactly.
Let me tell you about me again.
That's right. And so it's really a new discipline to shut my mind off and to really listen to what's important to that person and the story that they're sharing and what Trinity means to them and what their hopes and dreams are, not my dreams. So it was a really well thought out technique to learn for our listening leaders. And so I'm learning a lot in the process is really what it comes down to, Jeri. So it's a great question.
That's
I build?
neat. Yeah, this is what I'm hearing you say, not what I'm thinking.
That's right.
And I think it's so interesting in communication too that nonverbals say a lot. And so I know that some of the interviews have taken place here, and I think that's so great because when you're with someone, it's different.
Yeah, it's an interesting. So the person I was interviewing, at first we were going to just do a phone call, and I really, really pushed for, could we at least do it over Zoom
Right.
or at FaceTime so that I can see you? And she said, yep, that's not a problem. We figured out how to make it happen with technology. But it is better to have that nonverbal, right? So you can see each other and you can kind of get a better sense of what they're feeling. So I agree with you.
And we're just so happy to have people back in the church. Yeah. So that's another thing, which is just, it's so good to see people and good to be here. And I think sometimes that reminds us, it brings back memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I could add to that, I'm so glad Karen emphasized listening, not just as a technique to get the story out, the information that we want, but it's a necessary skill that is bigger than just a way to get a story out. It's I would argue that it's foundational in what it means to love your neighbor, to love each other. You first listen to who your neighbor is. And that's what's being practiced here. And in churches, we don't always do that well. We kind of charge ahead with the program and we want to attract people to our stuff. And we don't often or enough pause to listen to who each other is. And in this process, it's also to listen to who our neighbor is, including the ones that aren't here, because maybe they're not sure about their local church if that has what they need. So it's really important to find out who our neighbor is from a missional point of view. That's part of this. And also, as Karen suggested, learning to listen to God. That's kind of the main point of what church is this is all about God and where God is leading. So amen to listening, and that is the essence of We Are Here Now. And I'm glad someone like Karen is leading the listening charge, and someone like Troy is leading the steering team, because he's been taking in a lot of new information and has really been energized and engaged with this whole process. So it's encouraging to me, as your interim pastor, to see the leaders that you have among you.
I like the I think the ethnography part of it too, because that's all about the cultures of the area. Each community, Long Lake, Orono, Maple Plain, Plymouth, Wayzata, we have their own distinctions, and when you live somewhere, it's different It just is. And so I love that part about connecting with people in our community because we're not Minneapolis, we're Medina, we're Minnetrista. And living out here, sometimes Minneapolis seems a world away, depending on maybe you work downtown, maybe you don't. But I like connecting the people here and the people that we hope to attract and the new families that we hope to attract. We know there are a lot of new houses and new homes, and we would love to see more people here. Within whatever our vision is termed to be, right now I think we want to be a thriving Christian community, enabling all to use their vocations to have more believers and do the Great Commandment. So one of those tools that we're talking about where we all can be involved is Pastor John, besides the faith practices, another course that's coming up. You want to tell us about GPS?
Yeah, I'd love to. GPS, Finding Direction for Faith and Life's Journey. This is a course that I wrote in my graduate school training that I'm still involved with. Haven't quite completed that yet, but it's something that I have a great deal of passion over, because one thing that I've heard over and over through the years in my ministry is people struggle with how to connect their faith to their daily life. They think that that the life of faith happens when you're in the church building, and when you talk about God and Jesus and you're in worship. But in truth, most of our callings, according to Martin Luther, and when you read Scripture carefully, tells us that our callings are 24/7, that God calls us into a partnership with God out in the world, at home, at work, and that everyone's calling, no matter where you are, lay people, is every bit as important as a pastor's calling, and it is of God, and it is wonderful. So, I say wonderful because it's encouraging to hear and understand the message that what we do Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday matters and makes a difference in the world, that we have an opportunity to create a more trustworthy, hopeful, and loving world. And so the course that I'm teaching focuses on helping people to pay attention to all of the different ways that they are gifted: natural abilities, spiritual gifts, personality, passions, interests, values, as well as one's personal story, whatever it is, the places where one lives one's life, the gift of each other in the groups that we gather in, and how that is a gift to us, and it's also a gift to those around us as God asks us to use those gifts to serve and love our neighbor. So that's what the course is about, helping to find direction in faith and life, and to use our gifts to respond to God's callings to us. And there's a good bit of Lutheran theology in there as well. It'll be a good way to sort of bone up on Luther, and kind of the best of Luther just has these gems that sometimes collect dust on the shelf. But as a friend of mine once said, reflecting about millennials today, many of whom don't go to church, by the way, that millennials are Lutherans and they don't know it. And if you come to the course, you'll understand why that is. So that's GPS, and it's a workbook. You can do it at home. You don't even have to zoom in on Tuesdays, or you could just zoom in now and again on Tuesdays, or every Tuesday. But I'm looking forward to this journey with folks.
I want to do a little shout out for that. We did Life Keys back in the day, and Kathy Thunheim led that, and that is where Jennifer Larson and Sue Vickerman had the gifts of hospitality. Now, they probably knew they had that, but it was really brought up to the surface and highlighted. And wouldn't you know, pretty soon they were using their gifts here. Kathy she led that course, and now she says, I'm taking this again. because this was a highlight of things that I've done in my life. She had better words for it, but so I just want to give that as a, hey, it's worth doing.
And by the way, the Life Keys workbook is a part of the GPS course. It's rolled right into a broader, more Lutheran context. So it's Life Keys and more.
Yeah.
Love it.
And what a comfort I think it is for me. I did the faith practices. My comfort was to see other Trinity members' faces on Zoom and hear from them. That was. John said, where do you see God? And I said, in the other members, because, you know, they are Trinity. We are Trinity, which was so great. So, if you aren't involved yet and you have some things to say, how can you get your message to people on these teams?
Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So the first answer is that there will be opportunities with cottage meetings where we'll invite a much bigger cross-section. Really, we'll invite all of the congregation to participate. Secondly, from a call committee standpoint, we're open to hearing from you at any time. So whether that's via email, phone call, text message, our contact information is on Trinity's website, all of the members of the call committee, and we're happy to hear from you at any time. So those are two ways, if you haven't been heard from yet, that you can be heard.
Because we value each person's thoughts, opinions, negative, positive, in between. We want to know. I mean, we really want to know. So I think that is, I mean, it's great that we have so many people on these teams. They are listed on our website on the we are here now. Gosh, I also want to say, where are we?
That must be the Trinity. The Trinity
We
version
are
is
here now.
Where are we now?
Exactly.
That's one of the FAQs right there. Where are we? And it really is. It's-
I can't even say it. All right. Another question I have heard is, let's see, are you taking names for the senior pastor, and do you want a him or a her or a certain age?
Great question. And at this point, we don't have a him or her or age preference. We really are waiting to discern what is out there. That's the first thing. Secondly, I have already received names of candidates. We haven't done anything with those names. I'm just kind of banking them at this
What?
point.
You haven't done anything with the name I gave you?
But that's great. And if people have candidates that they think are a great fit, certainly let us know about that. We will probably wait until we have gotten enough information from this We Are Here Now process before we are able to really assess any candidates. But if people know of a candidate they think would be great for our church, certainly let us know about it. Again, contact information is out there. We're happy to hear.
That is great. And Pastor John would say, why are you giving this name? What about them is important? So that's something to think about as you do it. If not, I'm sure we can find those answers out as well. So what have we missed?
Well, not much.
Yeah.
But maybe this. I know that many, I've heard the question often enough, why is this so slow? Why does this have to take so long? Understandable. I think we're seeing across the board in churches that interims are taking longer now because it's more difficult doing church and being church in the 21st century than it was in the 20th century, honestly. So congregations just on account of that reason have to hit the pause button and listen and ask questions. But during an interim when we're waiting for a new senior pastor, it's really critical to get a clarity about identity in a deep, rich way, which is what this is all about, and then to learn how to listen more to where God is leading us, the discernment piece, so that there can be sort of optimal alignment between the person that we're calling and Trinity. So it helps to know who we are, and it also helps that prospective pastor to know who we are. And when there isn't alignment, I've seen that in churches where congregations move too fast or a pastor jumps too fast. And then you don't want to go there because then it doesn't work out so great. So this is all in the interests of creating the best alignment possible. And it can't be rushed too much. So it needs to take a few months to do this. So that's my quick answer to that question of why does it take so long. I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that.
I would just add to that, Pastor John, in terms of once you have that alignment, the opportunity here is that the onboarding of the senior pastor is short. They have a sense of where we want to go, and then it's a faster amplification of that vision. And so it may be that we're poised here with some time to get that rich articulation, but it's going to help us really amplify 3-4 months from now or 6 months from now. When that person's here, they know where we're wanting to go, and they're able to get us there quicker with the whole community.
We are blessed to have, we can see that we have great people on this team with you, and we have many more. These are really smart people. They are working hard. I mean, they are working really hard. And I think another thing that has poised us for this time is the strategic plan that we had been working on. And many of those goals accomplished because of your generosity and because of your support of that. So we want to thank you for that. And we want to also acknowledge that that really has put us in a kind of a level set position now to jump off for the discernment and the assessment, which sounds kind of boring because you want action, but you know, I mean, if you're a nurse, that's the first thing you do, you assess. You know, you have to take some time and get the information. So I'm very thankful for each person who is doing that and the teams that you created. That's another thing that's so important, is creating a team that, you know, when you do that, you get to have a cohesive group, and not that you might not disagree for sure, but you have roles and you work together. So thank you for that. And thank you, Pastor John, for leading this effort and for bringing in new ideas and ways to look at things, and your experience that you're having as you work on is your doctorate? Is that what you're working on?
No, it's a master's of theology.
A master's in
They call
master's.
it a doctoral junior because it's a doctorate junior. Because it's a research degree and I have to learn a foreign language, but it's about half of the work of a doctorate. But so
Thank you
MTH.
for that, not only your ministry experience, but also your continuing education and the research. So I just see our Trinity values in each of you: the generosity, the grace, faithfulness, service, and that is incredible. So we wish all of you a wonderful day, and I think you know where you can go for questions, concerns, and please do reach out. And we want to see you back here in worship. Come to worship, sign up. Mark had a choir this morning. There was energy, and it's so good to see people back. And we hope to work to more people. We hope to work to Sunday school at some point. We're having confirmation. We had confirmation the last 2 Wednesdays, and now it's mentors. And also Ash Wednesday coming up, 6:30. So, all right. Thanks for joining us next week. Very important. Ward Brem, who has been here before, you all really liked him. You thought he had a lot of insightful things to say. He's a business owner. He's been a missionary. And he is now looking at his next step, which is retirement. And he's had some thoughts about good endings and new beginnings. All right.